Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order. If we could have a roll call, please.
Shelley Reed. James Fewens. Diane Vanderwell.
Here.
James Barnes.
Here.
Sarah Chavilicek.
Here.
Larry Chesney.
Here.
Mark Johnson.
Here.
Kathleen Taylor.
Here.
And Peter Gower.
Here.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Fewens, would you lead us in the pledge, please? Thank you. Item 3, approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
We're at item 4, public comment, and this is for general public comment. Do we have any public comment?
I have none for this item.
Thank you. We'll close public comment. We'll bring it back to business for the day. I'm going to turn this over to our legal counsel, who will go through some, just to give you an update of what we're going to do today, just a kind of some process things, and then we'll bring it back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Prenti for the record. Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. Just a few comments. Initially, there's been some conversations and concerns raised regarding implementation of the new plan once it's actually adopted by the Regional Planning Governing Board. And I just wanted to articulate and let everyone know that from the regional perspective, we will be treating everyone fairly. And as determined by the facts and circumstances of any particular case, if someone has begun a local planning process prior to the adoption of the new plan, if regional review is triggered, that review will be conducted under the old plan, the 2012 plan. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone had an understanding of that. And then as to the process for the next 3 evenings, this is the first of 3 statutorily required public hearings where this body will be receiving testimony from members of the public regarding approval and your recommendation to the Regional Planning Governing Board on the adoption of the plan. The role of the RPC is to receive and consider this testimony as it makes its decision in the recommendation to the Governing Board, which will likely take place on Friday evening, depending upon how the next 3 evenings go. So if anyone has any questions, you know how to find me.
Questions for council? Commissioner Gowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica, what is the threshold of changes, if received from the public, that would essentially require a restart of the process that we've initiated tonight?
All right. At any point in time over the course of these 3 hearings, if this commission decides that it wants to make a change to the draft plan as presented today, then you can request, depending upon how substantive of a change you want. If it's something that can be done quickly, then let's say, for example, tonight. If something happens tonight that makes this commission as a body decide they want to take action and direct regional planning staff to make a change to the regional plan based upon the testimony you've received today or anything else, then we would have that motion proceed. You would take action on that. You would direct regional planning staff. Tomorrow night, if there's enough time, we would come back to this body with those revisions. And then, what would happen then, because the plan that is being considered in each of these 3 hearings, and there are 3 consecutive hearings that are required to be considered, has to be identical, then what that will necessitate is that we will have to push out and schedule a 3rd hearing on the revised plan. So tomorrow would become the 1st hearing, Friday would be the 2nd hearing, and we would schedule another hearing with proper noticing at a location within the city of Reno. That would be the 3rd hearing. So it would push it out, certainly. If this body approves the plan, recommends approval of the plan to the RPGB, and they decide to make a change, then it comes back down to this body for their review and comment. So, and that's the statutorily contemplated process.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I return it to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So for any member of the public who wishes to present testimony tonight, we'll ask you, if you have not done so already, there's comment cards, and staff will direct you as to which one you fill out, general public, and then one for the testimony. We want to ensure that everyone has a full opportunity to present their comments, but also to proceed in a fashion to ensure everyone will be heard. We will allow each person 5 minutes. If you anticipate that you will need more than 5 minutes to make your presentation, please let us know approximately how much longer you anticipate your request to accommodate your request. So we would just like you, so is that really clear? You have 5 minutes. If you need more time, let us know. Okay? And I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. We're going to do a quick, short presentation about the regional plan draft, and then I have a couple of housekeeping items in terms of a glossary, a mistake we found in the glossary, and some correspondence we received. So to start, I have the clicker, that's right. Just to reiterate, yeah?
Maybe you have it.
Clerk Damian Kerwin, can you please forward the slide? Thank you. Okay, just to remind folks, per what legal counsel pointed out, we're going to be having 3 meetings. This is the first of the 3 RPC hearings tonight. Then tomorrow, we will be at the City of Sparks Council Chambers at 6 p.m. Following that, we'll be at the Marvin Piccolo School on Foothill Road on Friday night, the 27th, also at 6 p.m. Depending on how those meetings progress, we may be going, we're certainly having a governing board meeting on Thursday, October 10th at 2 p.m. Whether or not the resolution will be considered, we'll wait and see. So that would be the next step. Okay, let's see if the clicker works now. Great, so just to kind of recap, it's been a long process, right? Since about June of 2017, when we actually got our budget approved and the go-ahead from the Regional Planning Governing Board to begin work in earnest on the regional plan update and to create a request for qualifications to hire a consultant to come give us a hand with putting together the new plan. But even prior to that date, we did take part in a couple of supportive efforts and foundational work. Supportive efforts include our industrial land needs analysis, which we completed in 2013, where we looked at the viability of industrial parcels and kind of ranked them in terms of their shovel readiness, and kind of contextualized industrial land in Washoe County versus other industrial lands in the region. We built upon that work to complete a housing study, which was published in 2016. In that, we looked at 2 scenarios of the future, and we also compared costs to serve those 2 growth scenarios with capital infrastructure expenditures for 4 major regional services: water, wastewater, schools, and roads. And so those were pretty successful projects that really built our technical capacity and prepared us for this regional plan update. Further, we participated in some foundational work, specifically with Portland State University at their Urban Sustainability Accelerator. It was a year-long program where we had access as a team of TMRPA staff, planning staff from the City of Reno, City of Sparks, and Washoe County, as well as our elected and appointed officials. Some folks here at this body today participated in the mid-year convening, where we got to go and participate in basically presentations from experts, meetings. We had some reports commissioned for us, one by Robert Liberty that looked at regional planning across the country and tried to basically contemplate how does our regional planning apparatus fit in. We're pretty unique. Further, we had G.B. Harrington do a presentation here in town about transit-oriented development corridors, and he also produced a report. So that was some of the work that helped lead us to then get kicked off and actually do the plan in earnest. So that's the gray bar you see there. Scenario planning, we've been through that a lot, right? We looked at the 4 different scenarios that we created for this regional plan, and to help us have the conversation with the community about how we want to grow. That was a pretty effective exercise where we learned quite a bit and again built technical capacity and data analytics into how we're looking at these land use patterns. We had 14 different metrics that you can find in Chapter 2 of the regional plan that describe how each scenario performed in terms of things like land utilization, a housing mix, wastewater generation, student generation, and the like. So that really helped us to get to an understanding of how the regional plan could help us meet our regional goals, and also to the regional form map that is in Chapter 2, Map 2, Regional Form. But then a huge chunk of the work was really focused around policy development and evaluation. In the current version of the regional plan, there's about 142 goals and policies. It's a fairly convoluted document, pretty technical, kind of difficult to negotiate even for staff, and difficult to implement. And so we went about in a group called the Regional Plan Update Working Group, a collection of staff from City of Reno, City of Sparks, Washoe County, the school district, the RTC, the Western Regional Water Commission. Sometimes we brought public works people in, and whoever wanted to participate was obviously invited. We met weekly or bi-weekly for about 2 hours at a time to really hash through the policies. And so we were able to pretty much go policy by policy in the old plan, and we understand where those policies ended up. Either they were removed because they were redundant, or we didn't feel like they were appropriate. They were combined, or in some cases expanded. And so we have kind of a crosswalk that's available as supporting material to show exactly where all the old policies kind of went and how we ended up with the new set of about 60 policies in this draft 2019 plan. One major thing that we focused on in that process was trying to re-embed the regional planning document, the regional plan, into our Nevada Revised Statute 278.0274, which describes the contents of what ought to be in the regional plan. So we actually divided up our policy chapter, Chapter 3, into 5 elements: population growth, regional form, public facilities and services, natural resources, and regional coordination. And then we have policies within each of those. So that's how we work together to get to the draft plan that we have here today. All along the way, we've been trying to do our best to engage everyone who's interested, all key stakeholders, the public, government bodies. We've had presentations to NABs and CABs, to specialty groups like environmental groups, the builders, the realtors, trying to get it out in front of this as much as possible. And so what you see here, this is kind of the first page of our executive summary infographic that we put together that's in the packet and is available on our website. It does a pretty good job, and it's also, thank you, available for you to take home today if you want one. That does a good job in 4 pages of kind of breaking down what did we do, what are the key findings, what changed, and where are we trying to get to. So there is a little about engagement. The last version that we presented publicly was the August 23rd draft of the regional plan. Tonight we have something that we're calling the September 23rd draft of the regional plan, because along the way in these meetings we've found that there were some edits that needed to be made. I will say that none of the edits touched any of the substantive policy pieces. It was just sort of housekeeping edits. So we can go through some of them. Making sure we had the right list of folks in the acknowledgements in the beginning. We made a couple edits to that. We updated the table of contents to have hyperlinks so you could navigate quickly and put a little sort of how to use this document portion in that table of contents so that folks that wanted to get right to the policy chapter could see that on the first page. And we listed the page numbers of the maps, which is an important element of the plan. We spoke with the Reno Sparks Indian Colony. They are outside our jurisdiction as their own nation. And so in looking at some of the maps we had produced, they were somewhat concerned. We had in map 1 indicated that, and we had shown on the map where those tribal lands were. But we, in working with them, decided we could just put those tribal lands on every map. And we noticed through the process also that an existing utility corridor that's been mapped for years as part of the regional plan actually now is in the Hungry Valley expanded tribal lands to the north of town. So we indicated that on, I believe it is map 3, the corridor, regional utility corridor map, with a different symbology so that we know that that's actually on tribal lands. And so we're going to have to deal with that piece a little bit differently probably going forward. And that just sort of happened, outside of our control. Finally, we added some wording to the wider region interlude after Chapter 3 to describe how we plan to coordinate with the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, also with the Western Nevada Development District, and just generally, even though we don't have authority in the wider county regions, we're going to continue to work to reach that regional coordination. Also, we heard from the Washoe County Health District about the Ozone Advance program, something that they're participating in. We know that our community is very close to non-attainment in terms of ozone, and that has repercussions for our federal highway monies and for the regional transportation plan. And so we created a call-out box. We already had policies in there that align with the Ozone Advance program, but we created a call-out box to really specify were aware of this, and so should you be. We updated some definitions and added them to the glossary, a couple grammar edits, and we did a few finalizations to graphics. So with that, that's the end of the presentation. I have a few more things, but if you have any questions about any of that in the meantime, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So there's two kind of more housekeeping items. The first is, before we receive public testimony, and we've provided a copy of this page up there by the, I guess there's comment cards, but up there by the packets, it was pointed out to us that on page 141 of the September 23rd draft, our definition of the rural area was incorrect. And I'm going to read now what the definition ought to be, and this is the update that we've made, and which will be now included in tomorrow and Friday's packet as part of the plan. And it's the definition of the rural area, or RA, and that's the land outside of the TMSA. So all of the land subject to TMRPA jurisdiction that is outside of the TMSA. This area is restricted to very low-density development and generally consists of dispersed development and employment on large parcels of land. Parcels may not be less than 5 acres in size unless designated as a freestanding community or rural development area. We had mistakenly put in there greater than 5 acres, so it's actually less than 5 acres. So 5 acres is the minimum parcel size in the rural area, and that's described in the regional form policies as well, but now the glossary has been updated to reflect that. We thank the Palomino Valley GID for catching that edit. I believe Susan Ambrose was the person. So thank you. Okay, and then one more thing. We've received a bit of correspondence through our website since we put together the packet. So we put together as attachment 3 a collection of correspondence and input on the plan. We have made those pieces available as part of the record up there again by the packets, and we're going to go ahead and wrap those into attachment 3 for Thursday and Friday's packet. But further, we have also received formal written correspondence in the form of a letter from the University of Nevada, Reno, regarding the plan update, and if I may, I'd like to read that into the record right now.
Certainly.
Thank you. It's not too long. So it's dated September 24th, 2019, addressed to Dr. Jeremy Smith, Interim Director. Dear Dr. Smith, the University of Nevada, Reno owns a number of parcels throughout the Reno-Sparks community, in addition to its main campus north of Interstate 80. Specifically, it owns land south and adjacent to the Truckee River along Clean Water Way, known as the Main Station Field Lab, or MSFL. The MSFL encompasses over 800 acres and is critically important to the university. In reviewing the agendas for the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency's meetings scheduled for the week of September 23rd, 2019, it appears that the MSFL may be affected by the adoption of the draft 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. As directed by the Nevada System of Higher Education Board of Regents at their November 16th, 2018 meeting, the university is pursuing a conservation easement for the MSFL. We are unable to ascertain at this time how a Tier 3 land designation for a portion of or for the entire MSFL would affect the property. Given the lack of information on the impact of a Tier 3 land designation, the university requests no portion of the MSFL be designated Tier 3. The university has a clear record of working collaboratively with the City of Reno, City of Sparks, and Washoe County. We understand the need to update the regional master plan, but strongly disagree with the Tier 3 land designation for the MSFL. The university needs time to assess any land use designations and their impacts before any move to adopt the draft 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. We request this letter of opposition to Tier 3 land designation of any portion of the university's MSFL be provided to the members of the Regional Planning Commission and Regional Governance Board, as well as entered into the record at each meeting. We appreciate our ongoing engagement with the community and look forward to working with the TMRPA. Sincerely, Vic Redding. That's the letter. We're going to include that into the attachment 3 as well for the packets for Thursday and Friday. I had the opportunity to speak with Vic Redding today about the main station area and about the Tier 3 designation. I think he's feeling more comfortable about the direction that we're trying to go, and we also support the idea of conserving that land. So I think that hopefully we're aligned, but anyway, we have been addressing that issue. We're working together to solve it. Okay, I think with that, that's all of my items. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So we will now open the public testimony, and we will have Damien introduce each person who has submitted comment.
All right, first up I have Bob Listener, and then after that is Joanna Traeger.
Well, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you. I'm Bob Listener. I'm representing mostly lifestyle homes, although there are a number of properties in the same situation that are apparently not here. Lifestyle Homes in the past 30 years has built about 3,300 quality construction, let's say, homes in quality neighborhoods that if you look at them today, they look like brand new. Our homes are well taken care of and they're affordable. Forgot that part. We've given back over $5 million cash to the community over the past 30 years, including primarily to schools and then primarily in kindergarten there. And I wanted you to know that. Now, I've read most of the plan. You would be commended, staff is to be commended on a very, very nicely written plan. And for all the time that you have spent on it, you are to be commended as volunteers. And you should expect from this, when it finally goes to print as it is, commendation, but instead, you're going to get ridiculed. And the reason for that is this map here. Okay. Now, for starters, that is White Lake, zoned, according to this map, up to 30 units per acre on White Lake. That's 27,000 homes, or I don't know, houseboats. And the same situation there is Silver Lake, another 15,000 homes or houseboats, assuming that Reno approves such, and they probably wouldn't, but are you willing to put your names on a plan that says, well, it's okay with us if they approve between them 42,000 homes on lakes? I'd be embarrassed. I mean, can you imagine the headlines? And I can't resist myself on this. Can you imagine what would happen if Trump gets a hold of this? He likes to tweet about things like houses and lakes. In addition, here, and here, and here is all BLM property. There's about 5 square miles of BLM, which is about 3,200 acres times 30 units. I mean, is it really okay with you if the city of Reno decides to build 96,000 homes on BLM property, which happens to be the side of a mountain? What I'm saying is this map needs to be changed. And one more item. At the top, that is our Evans Ranch. Is it okay with you if the city decides that we can, instead of 5,600 units, we can have 56,000? Is it really okay? I suspect it isn't, but that's what this drawing says. One more item. White Lake, 27,000 homes. Silver Knolls, good land, close to jobs, close to utilities, 1,700 homes on 1,700 acres. It's ridiculous. We have presented to your staff today, and you may have copies of it, our drawing of what's really available in that portion of the North Valleys. There's very little. And for good reason, this map does not show political jurisdictions. It shows property that's unbuildable. It shows property that is already fully planned or built, and it shows a little bit of buildable property, which is the blue. Okay, so point number one is this original map needs to be changed. I can't see you approving it with that map in there. The next item is that we were told early on, mainly by county staff, that stakeholders would be brought into the process. The first that we heard that this plan was about to go final was last week. We have never been contacted about reviewing the plan, and with 6,000 acres, 10 square miles, we kind of thought we were a stakeholder, but we have not heard anything. Is that the end of my 5 minutes? Could I go about 2 more? Thank you. Thank you. Okay. We have a 30-year track record of working with the county staff, Planning Commission and County Commission, building the homes that we've built. But now we seem to have a problem with county. County staff has not told regional about our plans for our project called Silver Hills. We have a PUD, we have a handbook. It's been in process for 2 years, and regional said they didn't know anything about it. And what we were attempting to do there is to go from 1 acre per lot to 2.5 homes per acre. We're finally going to go after the missing middle, and with clustering and a fair amount of open space, and the county is fighting us every inch of the way. We've been denied by staff, we've been denied by Planning Commission, as some of you know, and we frankly don't understand why the county hasn't told regional, hasn't told us about what's happening with the regional plan, and is fighting us so hard. And frankly, those blue properties up there, some of which are ours, are the county's pretty much last chance to build affordable in the county. And instead, they apparently want 1 acre states, and we don't get it. There's no market. That's not affordable. So finally, okay, we have been advised by our attorney that this is probably a taking because the plan calls for reducing the maximum number of units in the county per acre from 5 to 1. And that's a fair number of properties besides ours. So we would like to be included in Tier 2. We think all of those blue properties there should be included in Tier 2. We don't need 30 units per acre, we certainly don't. But 1 is just not going to build affordable housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Joanna Traeger, and after that is Gordon Gossage.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Joanna Traeger. I'm going to read my comment because I am not great at public comment. So I am here representing the Truckee Meadows Bicycle Alliance, and I'm also a member of the Bicycle Working Group at the University of Nevada, Reno. So first of all, I just wanted to thank you for all of the time and effort that you put into this plan, and is especially delighted to see the infill option basically being endorsed through this plan. It was really encouraging, and it really seems like a move toward what we need in this region. So if we do move toward the infill scenario, as I think we should, and as I think the scenario planning and prior outreach results indicate that we should, then we as a region need to decrease our dependence on autos and increase the number of people who are traveling by bike, foot, and transit in order to reduce congestion and to improve air quality. So this means that we need to create safe, convenient ways for residents to leave their cars at home. So what I'd like to see in this plan, and I realize that I'm coming at this fairly late in the game, but I have just a couple of suggested edits. I would like to see a more explicit statement that we need a network of bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure in the TMSA that's safe, which means that it can be safe for riders from 8 to 80, as we like to say in the Truckee Meadows Bicycle Alliance. That it's comprehensive, meaning that it reasonably accesses all major areas in the TMSA, and that it's connected, meaning that users aren't periodically forced into auto traffic. So specifically, throughout the public facilities and services section of the plan, pages 95 to 104, I'd ask that we add language to explicitly endorse the creation of a safe, connected, and comprehensive network of bicycle and pedestrian facilities. This change in language and emphasis is important because the current model of just building ad hoc unprotected bike lanes that don't connect to destinations or to each other will not increase ridership and so will not serve our region's goals. I did send those specific language suggestions via email, and I appreciate you considering them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Gordon Gossage, and after that, Jim Rundle.
For the record, my name is Gordon Gossage of Regenesis Reno, and one of the things we're looking to do in the five-county greater Reno area is to use some of the principles of the YIMBY movement, the Yes in My Backyard movement, to increase the housing supply in order to lower the prices of housing and rents over the five counties. And again, I'd like to commend you for all the work you've done. I've been speaking with Dr. Smith for quite a while now about this, so October 10th will be really a wonderful date. One of the things we're doing at Regenesis Reno is looking to raise money from the private sector to supplement the work that the TMRPA can do. In particular, we'd like to hire a full-time equivalent person, hopefully with a PhD in geography, like some of the other people in this area. Work very closely with not just the three jurisdictions, and you guys, but also within the five counties, as you know, I believe there are like 12 jurisdictions. Besides the counties, there's the, city of Fernley and Yarrington and the tribal lands and so forth. So I realize to expand that is complicated, but we do have a regional issue here, as you know. And the community, in order to create a regenerative community, we really have to sit down and figure out to what extent do we want to build out Fernley versus building out the county versus building out one of my favorite areas, and that's the mixed-use area along the Virginia Street corridor that has been identified in Scenario 4. So at Regenesis Reno, I just want you to know we have purchased the Metro Study subscription for $10,000 a year, and we will make that available to subscribers that are working with Regenesis Reno. However, we also need the tool that you guys have created that is not quite ready to be used by the public. But if we can help that happen by creating an easier user interface, for use of the tool by sophisticated users, but users who are not currently working for the TMRPA. And I really urge you to coordinate as well with the enterprise community partnership has done an amazing job with their plan. I mean, it's a strange coincidence that somehow these two plans are being, published in the same month. And then there's also a third one from the Org Code consultants, which is an analysis of the homeless issue and housing for extremely low-income people. That is, families of four make less than 25K a household. And they also have done some great work, and there's a fair amount of mapping in all three of these studies that obviously needs a GIS expert or experts to bring it together and make it available to everybody who can use it. And YIMBY is a coalition between developers and housing activists. So we have a wide range of people in the YIMBY movement, some of which, don't have a whole lot of money, and some of them do. But one of the things we want to do is coordinate that. So besides the multi-use area in the downtown Virginia Street corridor, one of the things we absolutely have to work on in order to create a regenerative culture in Greater Reno is the North Valleys. And, with the help of Bob Listner, the folks who are developing Prado Ranch, Lennar Homes has, a lot of property up there. The Echeverias have a square mile of property on the slope of Peavine Peak. What we need to do is work together, private and public, without some of the acrimony that I know is natural, but we can overcome it, to figure out how to solve the flooding, to deal with some of the issues of zoning that Bob has brought up. We can't have 1 acre, one dwelling unit per acre anymore in that area. The North Valleys is where affordable and workforce housing should naturally occur. I mean, we want to have as much as we can in Midtown, but it's going to be a struggle to have inexpensive housing along Virginia Street no matter what happens. However, in the North Valleys, what I'd like to see is a complete build-out plan. kind of a optimal build-out plan for X thousand units in all the areas of the North Valleys. And, again, it's a scenario, but that a bunch of people, a bunch of stakeholders, both in the private sector and in the public sector, say, well, here's a, scenario 5 for the North Valleys that would say, well, this is the kind of build-out we want to see optimally. And it's not, one dwelling unit per acre, and it's also not 30 dwelling units per acre throughout the North Valleys. But to come to a meeting of the minds, of what you guys want Greater Reno to look like in 2030 and 2040. So again, I urge you to think about that. At Regenesis Reno, we're trying to build up our funding, and we look forward to working with you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Jim Rundle.
Hi, Jim Rundle, Planning Manager with the City of Sparks. I wanted to look at page 30, I believe, of your packet, which is page 14, includes the map of the regional jurisdiction. And I think that there's a portion on there that has a parcel going to Washoe County that is actually annexed into the City of Sparks. It would be west of Sparks Middle School, and it's just north of the private road Ponderosa. I just wanted to get that on the record that we could take a look at that and make sure we get that right. But as much as I can zoom in on the PDF that was supplied for the agenda, it looks like there's a parcel going to the county subdivision, or counties at TMSA, counties, what are we calling it now? Counties.
Unincorporated county area within the TMSA.
Yes, that. So we could take a look at that. That's my comment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment?
I have none.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak before I close public comment and bring it back to the board? Okay, I'm closing public comment and bringing it back to the board. So we spread maps everywhere. I'll just start with Commissioner Fuen. Do you have any comments? I'm just going to go down the line. Questions, comments, or?
Well, I think the map edits would be nice to see on for tomorrow's meeting, just especially in the lakes, and on the public comment for Mr. Rundle on changing cleaning up the maps a little bit.
Commissioner Johnson.
I think I would agree. I think there were some interesting points brought up with respect to the North Valleys. I'm also curious, maybe with the question about the university in terms of what they're looking at there. I'm a little perhaps not understanding exactly what they're doing, and is all of that land set under the same tier? Is it under different tiers?
It's under
and if
multiple
so,
tiers.
I think we might have some issues there that need to be looked at. I think certainly they're raising some concerns with one particular classification, but it seems difficult if we're not classifying that property all the same way and maybe taking a look at that. So I have some concerns about making sure we understand what's happening there and maybe a little bit more information provided as to, since it was brought up and put on the record, that particular property and how that's being looked at, and see if maybe we can get a little more consistency so that at least as a landowner, they're not looking at the same piece of property and being put under two different tiers. So those would be my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I finish down the line, if I could have Mr. Smith or Council Prunty address those questions in terms of specifically to the University Farm, because we did talk about that it has different tier designations on those properties.
I have very limited information, Madam Chair, but my understanding is that the portion of the University Farm that lies within the City of Sparks is Tier 3, and the portion within the City of Reno is Tier 2.
Within their sphere of influence.
Within their sphere of
Yes.
influence, excuse me. And The university has articulated a concern about the Tier 3 designation, but it sounds like that Director Smith has been working with the university, and that those concerns might be allayed through a collaborative process.
I would echo those statements, absolutely. After talking with Vic Redding today, I also spoke last week with Chris Pritzos, who is the director of the main
Dean.
associate dean, okay, of the main station. So we absolutely are committed to working with UNR to, help them, I think, to get a conservation easement, because that would be the impetus behind putting that land into the third tier, would be to protect it. A lot of that land is actually in the FEMA floodway that's already helps to address some of the other concerns around the mapping, one of our development constraints layers. And so in terms of map 4, that is a map that shows areas that per, I believe it's policy, let's see here, NR3 on page 107 of the plan describes our development constraints areas. And there are four specific kinds of strict constraints that, per the regional plan, no development is allowed upon them. And so those are slopes greater than 30%, federal lands, wetlands, and also playa and hydro features like White's Lake. So these maps that are pretty large-scale maps in the plan are meant to illustrate the policies. And in fact, if you want to zoom in and overlay these pieces, we're still working on it, but there is a version available online, a digital online map that you can turn layers on and off, and you can see how these overlays interact. And so the idea behind the regional form map was not to show the development constraints. That's actually on map 4. But through the GIS, we're always, those areas are not for development if they're in a DCA. So we can certainly work on some large format maps. That was our plan going forward with the adoption process, was to have kind of like 2x3 or 3x4 foot detailed maps available, versions of these maps that are in the plan here, along with the online mapping tool, so that folks can actually get in there and see how these layers interact. So even though it's a blue color on the map 2 regional form map, right, or a gray color or a dark blue color, other overlays come into play, specifically the development constraints layer, as well as our utility corridors layer, which has requirements in terms of distance from different voltage power lines.
So, Mr. Smith, in terms of when all the planning staff, when it got together and discussed those tier 1s, tier 2s, tier 3s, to be very clear, those are just really like 30,000 foot view, but there's lots of other
That's
things
correct.
come into play. So it's just the general statement of that area. And then if the development constraints come in, they get reflected as you drill down.
Absolutely, and they would always be removed from the developable land in any consideration of any master plan land use change or project of regional significance.
Okay.
And so I would just go on to say that the regional form map 2, is the result of months-long deliberation and building towards consensus among folks in the regional plan update working group. I would acknowledge that this is a living document and it's probably not perfect. And so one thing that we're really trying to promote as we move past adoption are 2 main initiatives: a public infrastructure investment plan and a natural resources plan. These 2 plans, we feel, are going to help give us the information to do a better job of refining exactly where those boundaries ought to be in terms of, do we have infrastructure in place that has capacity, or are we planning for that infrastructure, right? And so what areas need to be served? Further, in all cases, this is not, everything that exists today in terms of what is planned is grandfathered in. That is in Regional Form Policy 4, I believe. And so any entitlement that exists today in the old plan exists in the new plan. So this is for new requests moving forward post-adoption. And also this is a process piece that basically adds one layer of process, which we think is an important layer because it elevates the conversation to the Regional Planning Governing Board level when we are thinking about opening up new lands that don't have facilities, that are sagebrush today, that have very low-density zoning like GR, that's a discussion that we'd like to put in front of this body first, but then also take to the elected body as a regional plan amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Commissioners Fewen or Johnson, do you have any further questions, or does that offer clarification for you?
I appreciate the clarification. I think maybe the one follow-up I would have, and I did notice it as a part of the public comment, with respect maybe to a portion of the area that they were talking about with the mapping, and I'm not sure how this gets handled, but it does seem a little bit interesting, at least in the North Valleys, with the way the map is put together. It almost seems as though the Tier 1 and Tier 2, or excuse me, Tier 2 and Tier 3 are at odds with each other in terms of where the development is at and where the development could be, just looking at the overlay there. So I appreciate the discussion about it, but I think this is something, it's an interesting point that would be bear further review as we're looking at in terms of how we're classifying land and how we can look at that either as part of this adoption or as something that can be brought forward moving forward. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Vanderwell.
Thank you. Right now, I don't have any comments or questions, other than echoing Commissioner Fewen's on, if we can correct the Sparks map and everything else. But no, I'm pretty good.
Okay. Commissioner Gower.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just share the same concerns that were voiced regarding the maps for the North Valleys, and in particular with that map, the way the plan is laid out right now, it kind of directs the reader to that regional form map in Chapter 2 as essentially being the vision for the region. So if we're putting this map kind of on this pedestal as being the vision, then I think we need to make sure that it's right. I think that having overlay of Tier 1, Tier 2 lands, for example, over a lake is concerning. I know it's kind of a matter of semantics and probably just a GIS exercise to clean it up, but I do think that's an important thing to go through. The other thing that I wanted to just bring up was in response to Ms. Trieger's comments that were provided to us that had some specific recommendations, and I agree with those recommendations related to bicycle and pedestrian connectivity. And it kind of goes back to my question of legal counsel so one of the recommendations on page 101 is to change one of the policies. I think it's PF 12, if I get to the right page. So does that recommendation, if we make that change, does that constitute something that is going to restart this process, or does that come back to us in the form of kind of this one pager that we got today with the glossary change?
Well, the one pager with the glossary change came in before this meeting. So a substantive change to the policies, I think we're going to have to reboot the process. I would just note, though, that the Public Infrastructure Working Plan might be a home for the concern raised in regards to the bicycle connectivity. But I just throw that out there, that's your guys' decision. So if you choose that you want to take action tonight to direct staff to make amendments, then we will need to have a third meeting that will be separately noticed, and we'll, at that point in time. And that's what we'll just have to do for statutory compliance. As far as Mr. Rendell's comment about if there was a slight mapping error, I think that type of non-substantive clerical, essentially, correction will not necessitate a rebooting if that, in fact, is the case, that there's a parcel that should be in Sparks. As far as the tiering, if we change those designations, I think that is also substantive enough that we would need to have another third meeting, depending upon what type of consensus there is and when that change, if that change is made and accepted by this body.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Smith, it might be beneficial for, to be reminded about how those, what the purpose of that tiering is and what was discussed about why those tiers were formed the way they were.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I actually have a piece of paper in my pocket. I'm doing this just for Nate Kusha. First, through our work, the supportive work that we've done as part of the housing study and the industrial land needs analysis, we did deep dive into the GIS data in terms of the assessor parcel database. And what we've found is that when we compare the amount of capacity we have based on what has been entitled today in planned unit developments and active tentative maps and mixed-use zones that have vacant parcels within them, we have on the order of double the capacity within our TMSA than is forecasted in our consensus forecast for population over a 20-year period. And this is a 20-year plan. So this is something we've known about for several years now, and it was one of the, at the heart of what we were looking at when we went to Portland State University to get that expert help in terms of how do we move forward with the Truckee Meadows service area and the regional plan update, knowing that when we established it, oversized it in terms of, the amount of population that we're expecting. Further, there are areas within the TMSA that currently mostly are designated as a Tier 3 in this draft that are sitting at very low densities, as I mentioned, GR zoning at 1 unit per 40 acres. And so back of the napkin calculations I've done in the past, if you were to upzone that through a process, right, and, considering all the constraints as well, to 4 units per acre, it could bear on the order of 70,000 more housing units. Our 20-year demand is somewhere around 44 to 45,000 in that neighborhood. So that's in addition to the roughly 80,000 or more we have right now per the modeling. So that was the initial take on why we ought to think about a way to tier within the TMSA. Our statute indicates that we should be responsible with aligning public facilities provisioning and planning with the orderly management of growth for the region and in terms of the population projections that we look at, and that we should try to limit premature expansion. So the idea behind the tiering was a bit of a sprawl control mechanism, actually, that we could put into place that would set some lands into a type of designation that required a little bit more review in terms of those pieces. It's kind of like what we look at now to come into the TMSA as an amendment. We would now have a similar rigor from these Tier 3 lands to come into a Tier 2 land where you would expect to see intensification. So that's really sort of the impetus behind trying to do the tiering. And like I say, we have had several drafts of the tier map that came out through the process starting back in early February of this year. Initially, we were responding to the tool that Gordon was talking about, the hexagonal characteristics of development and our suitability, and where we knew we had pipes and roads on the ground. Our first tiering map reflected exactly where we have built things already today. And then we went through a huge process of identifying regional concerns ranging from our wastewater treatment capacities, our road congestion, working with the wider region, the missing middle, affordable housing. And we did that with the Regional Planning Governing Board, with this body as well, and with the public. And so a second draft of our tier map took into account those concerns spatially and really kind of even restricted that at that time, it was a Tier 1 area down and left this a large Tier 2 area. So that was not necessarily attractive to the Regional Plan Update Working Group. And this map does represent the compromise that we were able to hammer out with that group, with the folks that are going to have to participate, at least in the government level, in this process. And like I say, I think that they may not be exactly correct, and I don't know that they ever will be exactly correct. Conditions change. The forecasts are done every 2 years. They change. What we think we need, right? What is the market-driven need in the community? For a long time, it was residential, single-family. Now it seems to be more multifamily. For a long time, it was commercial. Now it's focused on industrial on the non-residential side. These kinds of things are evolving constantly. And that's why I like to think of this again as a living document that is something that can be amended, and we should expect that we should amend it as we react to the conditions in the region. And that is why we want to get more information that we can bring to you guys, more analytics, so we can react in an intelligent way, considering the cumulative impacts of the decisions that we make, instead of having this ability to just make decisions then have to react to the issues that come up later. We're trying to get out in front of it. And so the tiering is a mechanism that we collectively came up with in an attempt to link all of those factors together.
Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Barnes,
I don't have any questions at this time.
Commissioner Chesney,
I have none at this time.
Commissioner Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As one of the commissioners with the least experience of this plan, I don't have any comments, but I would say that I don't think I would necessarily be in support of adjusting or changing the tiers based on all of the work that people before me have done. It seems like comments from the University of Nevada, Reno can simply, not simply, but can be handled by some clarification by what the tiers mean. And that seems to be happening. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns before I give it back to council? So we need to take action well, we can take action this evening.
Madam Chair, Jessica Prenti for the record. Yes, you can take action if you want to direct staff to make some kind of modification. That would be the action that you would be taking. If you choose not to do that, then this hearing will, the chair can close the hearing and we can move on to the next item on the agenda.
I have Commissioner Vanderwell asking for language on a possible motion.
I think I would need to know what the subject matter of your motion would be.
Well, do we need to make a motion to accept, or?
No, you do not.
No,
We're good.
not-
Okay.
So it's, if we're directing staff, then that
Okay.
would have to be in the form of a motion.
Okay, I just want a follow-up question, which, because we seem to be getting into the weeds on the tier discussion. Jeremy, if you can please explain, I guess, down to just fifth grade level, maybe, the reasoning behind the tiers, that it had to do with infrastructure and things like that, so that we made sure that where infrastructure is where we started development versus the cost of trying to get infrastructure out to where it needs to be.
That's actually absolutely correct. I think what we're trying to do is optimize the investments our community has already made and understand where we have existing capacity and where we've planned to have capacity. I mean, how, bringing in a new development of whatever size is going to have an impact on the existing facility planning that's been in place. And I think we want to try to contemplate that before we make the decision, and we want to understand, okay, well, who gets it? Who gets that planned infrastructure capacity first? What are we going to do to make sure that everybody, what is that cumulative impact? And so really, yeah, it's a way to follow our Nevada revised statute that describes the contents of what the regional plan ought to do. And I believe it is at least subsection 4 and maybe 5 and 6 as well. We can take a look at that. But
You know that.
yeah, I've been reading a lot of this stuff. It does say that we need to align, right, the public facility planning process with the master plan land use decision-making process. And so that's a big impetus behind the tiering.
Thank you, I appreciate the clarification.
Madam Chair, just one more moment of point of clarification. I just wanted, even with the tiers as they exist on the map right now, they would not disturb any existing entitlements. I think everyone knows that here with this body and with members of the public. I just wanted to make sure that was on the record.
Thank you. And as Mr. Smith did point out, it's that anything after adoption of this plan, anything new that comes before these bodies is what the regional update prescribes to. Commissioner Gower.
Madam Chair, are we going to have essentially like what the local governments do in having a list of scheduled additions that we keep track of for the regional plan? Because my concern, frankly, is that the process that we're going through right now doesn't provide an adequate mechanism to incorporate the feedback that we receive at these meetings into an updated regional plan that would be recommended to the governing board.
Mr. Smith, we've talked about that in detail. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. In terms of a list of scheduled additions, what I've been in discussion with folks about so far is that other jurisdiction master plans and affected entity plans need to come to this plan once it's adopted for a conformance review, and there will be a list of scheduled additions, probably, but that's not, I think, what you're talking about. You're talking about what about the testimony we're hearing right now, and how can we work that into the plan, either in this process, which I don't know, we'd have to go to our legal counsel for that, or in a subsequent amendment to the plan. So, but I would ask the legal counsel to please weigh in.
Yes, Jessica Prenti for the record again. If you want to make changes, this would be the time to do so based upon the testimony that you've received. Even if it requires scheduling a third hearing or rebooting the entire 3-hearing process. If on Friday evening you receive additional testimony that at that point in time makes this body choose to take action to direct staff to make changes to the plan as it exists, as this draft exists, then we will simply reboot the process and we'll have the 3 meetings again after an appropriate noticing period. This is what our statutes contemplate. So this is the time. If we want to make changes to the draft plan that are substantive, this is the time to do so. And if this is something that you think that you can make note of and determine to, as Dr. Smith alluded to earlier, that as things progress, if we see implementation progress, if we want to come back and amend the plan later, that's always a process as well. So that's our constraints.
Anything else? What is the pleasure of the group? I'm taking your silence to mean where you're not suggesting in the form of a motion to make changes to this document tonight. And that applies to all. Commissioner Gower.
Madam Chair, I said it when you asked me before. I think that we've received feedback tonight that has merit in a revision to the regional plan.
Okay. So would you put that, and council can help to direct that into a form of a motion?
I know what my motion needs to be, Madam Chair. My concern is that I'm having difficulty understanding what the threshold is between a substantive comment
Yeah, exactly.
and a substantive change to the plan and what is not. And I think that anyone's definition of that term, whether it's this plan or any other context, is different.
I agree, yes.
Commissioner Gower, based upon what I heard tonight, the only change that I would recommend could be considered a non-substantive change would be the clarification and correction to the map, as pointed out by Mr. Rendell, if in fact that parcel is in the wrong jurisdiction. But any other changes based upon testimony presented tonight, that as far as the tiering, the regional form and pattern map, and policy language would be, in my opinion, a substantive change.
Okay.
Commissioner Gower.
I don't have anything else to say.
Okay. Do you have a motion?
Madam Chair, there are 8 other commissioners
I know,
who might
but-
want to make a motion.
Well, does anyone else have a motion? So it comes back to you.
Madam Chair, if these people came back to us tomorrow night with 20 other people making the same comment, I'm wondering if the commission would feel differently. If there were more people making the same comment and requesting the same changes to the regional plan, would you react differently? We only had two people making comments of requesting 2 substantive changes to the plan.
Okay.
They might come back tomorrow.
And they're, exactly, Commissioner Gower.
Madam Chair?
And so, in terms of, as my understanding in talking with council, that each night can precipitate a reset point. So if I'm hearing you correctly, then if we move to tomorrow night and then we hear more comments that may directly link to these, then there's an opportunity for further action from this body.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I'm having trouble with this process. I mean, we're going to each jurisdiction and we're receiving the collective feedback. So why restart the process after the first meeting?
Exactly.
Why not go to the end of the
Okay.
sequence and get all of the feedback and then make a determination?
Commissioner Gower, you can certainly do that.
Then that's my
And you
motion.
can get the cumulative feedback from all members of the public, receive all testimony from anyone who wants to present testimony. And if at that point in time, you're not comfortable with this draft, then we
Then
hit
we
the
can
pause
amend,
button,
okay.
direct staff to make changes, and then we'll reboot and
Okay.
have another 3 hearings.
Okay, that's my motion.
Then I'm going to ask council, does that have to be in the form of a motion? Or do we just keep moving forward?
I think the motion would be to accept the testimony presented tonight and to consider continuing to receive testimony. I don't think you need to have a motion at this point in time. Unless you want to make a motion to receive and accept the testimony, and we'll be reconvening for a continuation of these hearings tomorrow night.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, my motion would be to accept the testimony that we've received this evening and considering the potential for 2 substantive comments to the regional plan. I'd like to continue hearing the feedback as we go to the other jurisdictions tomorrow night and Friday and make a determination whether to move forward at the conclusion of public testimony at our last hearing on Friday.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Johnson, I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner McGalloway? Vanderwell?
That's okay. Well, he's hogged the mic all night, so.
No, he hasn't.
I'm just going to have to say that I respectfully disagree with you, Commissioner Gower. We have been working on this since 2016. We have had several meetings, not only with the Planning Commission, but the Governing Board, the jurisdictions, the community, and everything else. So, and we did detailed workshops. So I'm all for getting feedback and things like that, but this has been out on the internet. It's been on social media. They give us the data, how many people it has touched, how many people have answered surveys. So I sat here the last time we did the update of the regional plan, and I can say that this time, the way we did the regional plan and with the community outreach and things like that was substantive this time. So, and that's the end of my comments.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Chesney?
I agree with Commissioner Vanderwell. We're gathering information, but if we see the same people coming back through the next 3 meetings, making the same recommendations, they're still representing one entity, no matter how many times they make the recommendation. And we have, and staff has done exhaustive research and work on this, and for anybody to say that they never had an opportunity to participate in the process, they're wrong. They've had 2 years to participate in the process. So if they want to wait till the last minute and try to make substantial changes to this, I believe that they missed the boat a long time ago. So anyhow, I agree with Commissioner Vanderwall.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair, since I seconded that, I wanted to explain, Commissioner Johnson, the second, and the reason I did that is because I believe what's happening and what Commissioner Gower is struggling with is the fact that we are hearing feedback that is presented in such a manner that, as council has pointed out, if we chose to accept that, will cause a restart of this. And in my mind, what Commissioner Gower is asking is to not have that reset happen tonight, but to listen as a body for the next 3 nights and deliberate on Friday night whether or not what we have heard either at this meeting or of the next 2 meetings has put us to the point where we want to incorporate those changes. So the reason I'm seconding the motion is not because I think we're going to reset the button unless we hear something else, but I want us to have that opportunity and recognize that I believe that neither tonight nor tomorrow night should be the point where any of us would choose to hit that reset button, but to say together as a commission, we are not going to do that tonight. We're going to assess it, and when we make the recommendation on Friday night is the time to consider whether we, as individual members, are comfortable making that motion to the governing board. So that is the reason why I've seconded it, because I think that's the proper approach to take rather than having this discussion again tomorrow night based on this feedback or any other feedback that we might have. Thank you.
Any other?
Madam Chair.
Vanderwell.
Commissioner Johnson, thank you. And I do agree the same, that we should hear all 3 nights and then decide if we need to reset or we need to do anything else. But I wanted it on the record that everyone in this process has been working on it since 2016. So just wanted some clarification to that.
Commissioner Gower.
Madam Chair, if I could just make one follow-up comment. I wholeheartedly agree with the effort that's gone into it. Commissioner Vanderwell, Commissioner Chesney, I mean, I've been there with you going through these meetings and this process, and it's an exhaustive process. But if we're not willing at the end to receive public feedback and consider that feedback into the process, then we're doing ourselves a disservice, because that's exactly the reason that statute is requiring us to go to all 3 jurisdictions so that we get that feedback. Someone like Ms. Trieger, who's potentially come into this process, maybe she just saw it online, or went to a meeting last week or 2 weeks ago. We can't penalize her or anyone else who engages in the process at the end of it because they just happen to find it at that stage in the process. They have every right to make a comment and to see their change incorporated into the document as anyone else, a developer or anyone else who should have been involved from the very beginning. So I think in terms of a fair process, that's exactly what we're doing. And we need to be open to that kind of feedback from the public in these meetings and be willing to, on Friday night, say, okay, we've gotten some good feedback. We've been in this process for 3 years, but gosh darn it, this is important information. Let's take a step back and incorporate it, and we'll come back and do it again in 3 weeks. We can't just say we're going through this process and our mind is completely closed to any changes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I don't, Madam Chair.
Commissioner
Chesney. I don't believe that anybody's suggesting that we should just ignore the public comment, but we do have to evaluate whether the public comment is legitimate enough to make changes to a regional plan that would normally be handled in a jurisdiction's master plans and area plans. And so we need to keep in mind that this is a regional plan, and different jurisdictions are going to have their plans that will meet this plan, and they can make any subtle decisions on bike paths or whatever when they redo their master plans.
Any other discussion before we call for the question? And I'm going to ask staff to do a voice vote so we have that recorded properly. And the vote is in favor of Commissioner Gower's motion.
James Fewens?
Sorry, can we get a
Yes.
recap on the motion?
Council.
I think that maybe a restatement of the motion after that discussion would be appropriate. Commissioner Gower?
He's going to try.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My motion is the same in that we accept the comments that were received tonight that potentially include substantive changes to the regional plan, that we continue to receive feedback at our next 2 meetings, and at the end of our public hearing on the Friday meeting, that we make a determination of whether to recommend the plan for the Regional Planning Governing Board.
And Madam Chair, my second remains with that motion. Thank you.
So, Commissioner Fields.
Commissioner Fields.
I will support that, yes.
Commissioner Johnson, aye.
Commissioner Javilicek, aye.
Commissioner Vanderwell, aye.
Commissioner Gower, aye.
Commissioner Barnes, aye.
Commissioner Chesney, aye.
Commissioner Taylor, aye.
Thank you all. That closes this item, and we move on to the other items in our agenda. Item 6 is reports, members and directors' reports. Mr. Smith?
I have nothing to report at this time, other than we have a few more meetings coming up that we already talked about.
Item B, legal counsel report.
Nothing more, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Item 7, request for future agenda items. Seeing none. Item 8, public comment. We'll close public comment. Item 9, written correspondence.
We have none that we've not already heard.
Okay, thank you. Move to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. We'll see everyone tomorrow night.